Good morning to one and all. Good morning. How are you all doing out there? Good. So glad everybody's here. For those of you I don't know, my name is Owsley Brown, and I am this year's volunteer chairperson for the Festival of Faiths, and want to welcome everybody and thank you for coming this morning, and let you know we've got a great program this week. Wonderful day today, tomorrow, and the next day. So feel free to take as many catalogs as you'd like, hand them out to your friends. We're also streaming all of these programs live, and also they'll, of course, be able to be watched on our YouTube channel after the fact. So you can also tell your friends who maybe would be interested that they can join us that way too. And hello to everybody who is online, and welcome to you too. Just one quick note before I introduce Gerardo. At 10:30 today, we have a wonderful session with Patrick Holden, who's one of the foremost authorities on sustainable agriculture in the world, and he'll be here at 10:30. So if you can, please join us for that as well. It gives me just tremendous pleasure to welcome back to Louisville for his fourth visit, Gerardo Abboud, who's come all the way from his hometown of Buenos Aires. Just arrived yesterday, and it's just really a result, certainly, of every past visit that we so much wanted him to come back this year. Gerardo is one of the leading Western practitioners of meditation, and specifically through Tibetan Buddhism. He has other Kentucky connections, which include his own lineage in Tibetan Buddhism that is connected to the same group of people that Thomas Merton met when he went to India in 1968, and specifically met a man who was the 8th incarnation of someone called Kamtrul Rinpoche. Gerardo studied with the 8th Kamtrul Rinpoche, who has a very nice picture in Merton's Asian journals that Merton took. Gerardo's also writing a book that will be published by Shambhala and released in January, which is a practice commentary that was written by the third Kamtrul Rinpoche, Gerardo? Yeah, by the third Kamtrul Rinpoche. And that will be quite a special and marvelous book for all of you to check out in January when it comes out. Gerardo trained as a young man as an engineer at the Ford Motor Company, and I think expected that he would be an engineer at the Ford Motor Company until he had a brief break. He was supposed to move to the U.S. and had a window to go and travel, and bought a car in England and drove it all the way to India. And it decided once he got there that maybe he would not go back to Ford, and stayed for 14 years living in Tibetan communities in India. He is today the Dalai Lama's translator in all of Latin America, and it is a great joy to welcome him back and welcome him to this stage now. So Gerardo, so glad you're here, and welcome.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Owsley. As usual, your introductions are too much. I think we're going to start with 1 minute of silence, and I'll talk a little bit. This is the way that's been done in this Festival of Faith, so let's do it. Meditation is a word that is nowadays is being used in so many ways. Sorry, I have to correct this. It's maybe, yeah, because it's, you know. So meditation is a word that has become quite common now, and there are so many types of meditation. It didn't used to be like that. Before, meditation had a lot of the sense of contemplating or reflecting on a certain subject, like using an analytical mind and concepts. But now, because of the traditions that mainly came from the East, then we have a different way of understanding what it means. In Buddhism, of course, meditation is like the heart of the whole path. Without meditation, it's very difficult to produce the transformation that we are supposed to have within ourselves in so many ways. We need to transform our perception, we need to transform our feelings, transform our emotions, and many aspects that we have to address if what we are really wanting to find is happiness or well-being. And meditation, of course, is the tool for that. Basically, it doesn't have much to do with thinking, although, of course, there are meditations which are analytical meditations, and in which then one starts to contemplate and think about a certain subject. Most of the times, maybe it could be like philosophy, try to understand the nature of reality through philosophy, and how we can approach the nature of reality through philosophical logic and so forth. And that involves thinking. And, or maybe because we want to develop within ourselves a sense of compassion and loving kindness and equanimity and these other qualities that we have within ourselves, but in a very kind of primitive way. So there are special practices in Buddhism in which we use analytical meditation in order to enhance and to make all these positive emotions grow within ourselves to inconceivable levels. But then there's other types of meditation which have much more to do with not really getting involved with thinking. I would say that what we're trying to do is yeah. Sometimes it's believed that meditation is a way to produce a blank mind, a mind without any thoughts. And although when we talk about meditation in the context of analyzing and just checking so that we have a direct perception of what our mind is, then it does have to do with how we deal with thoughts. Then meditation itself doesn't have, at least in the Buddhist context, like an attitude of rejection or suppressing thoughts. Thoughts cannot be really suppressed very well. But in any case, our situation is that we are always thinking. And the problem with thinking is not that the mind produces thoughts, because, you know, that is the nature of things. Fire produces or is hot, and water is also wet, and mind also thinks. That's no problem with it. But what is the problem is the way that we deal with our own thoughts. That is a big problem. A big problem because it does not show that we are seeing thoughts as they are. by all means, thoughts are totally intangible. They're just like waves or mental forms that happen in our mind. But then, why do they have so much power over us? Thoughts are, we have given thoughts without deliberately wanting to do that, but in an unconscious way, like we've always been thinking so much that thoughts have a very, very strong power over our attention. And also, because of that, then somehow we are dominated by thoughts. So in that case, then we have to start to check if that is something normal, not normal in the way that it is habitual, because of course that is habitual. And the most habitual thing that we have is distraction. Unfortunately, we are most of the time distracted. And that serves absolutely no purpose. It doesn't serve any purpose, even in a worldly way, let alone in a spiritual way. But thoughts, the problem is that because they have this power over our attention, then that is the reason why we are so distracted. And when we are distracted, then we're totally at the mercy of thoughts. If we look at the different states of minds that we have from the moment we wake up until we go to bed, they're all caused because a thought came. Of course, maybe there is a situation also, but so many times there is no particular situation. There's like a memory of someone that has hurt us, a memory of something that I didn't say the right thing, but I should have said a better thing, a memory of also a good situation that happened. And immediately then there is a response from us at an emotional level caused by that thought. So if what we're trying to aim at is a well-being, which is fine, I mean, that is what we have. Everybody, all of us human beings, we want to be happy and nobody wants to suffer. Nobody wakes up in the morning and says, okay, I hope I suffer the whole day long. That's not something that happens. I mean, everybody wants to be happy. From childhood to now, everything we did has always been geared to be happy. But not only human beings, if we see animals, also they want to be happy. Nobody wants to suffer. That is something that is within us. It's something organic, and it's perfectly all right. We want to be happy. We want to experience well-being. And all our life is always geared to that. We want to achieve that. That is fine. But the problem is that if we are subject to the power of our thoughts, then it will be very difficult because we don't have freedom. When a thought comes, immediately it triggers some kind of emotion. And the emotion, of course, conditions our state of mind. Maybe we are the whole morning, we are kind of down because of some thought that happened. And it was just a thought, it was just a memory. It is all right with thinking, but also we should be able to, if we want to not to get involved with the thought, we should have that power. And that at the beginning especially is what meditation is all about, at least in the Buddhist context. It's not so much about suppressing thoughts, but we don't have to be so much at the mercy of their power. So, because of meditation, then we learn how to take that exaggerated importance that thoughts have on us, that kind of magnetic power that it has on our attention. That is something that we can try to work out. And then if we can work that out, then we can think, there's no problem. Because as soon as there is a thought that we know it's not a good thought because it will really affect my emotions, it will also maybe move me to do some kind of action that is no good, then we can immediately know how to work that thought out and to release that thought and to allow that thought to come and not to have that kind of subservience that we have to thoughts. And actually, if we look at our minds, we are always thinking. All the time we are thinking. From morning till evening we're thinking of all kinds of things. And we go to bed, and maybe there's a few instants in which we don't have any dreams, so we have a deep sleep. But right after that, dreams start to happen, and dream is also a thought process. So the mind is always, always working. It never rests. It doesn't rest during the day. It doesn't rest during the night. It's a 24/7 kind of thing. It's all the time working and thinking. And again, it's all right, we can think, but we should be able to stop thoughts, or we should be able to stop getting involved with thinking when we want. The fact that we cannot do that, that is already pointing at that we don't really have that much freedom. We are really somehow dominated by our own emotions, by our own perception. And that is something that does not really go along with trying to find happiness, because if we want to be happy, if we want to have an experience of constant well-being, an experience of long-lasting well-being, then we have to be free. We cannot really be subject to situations or thoughts or emotions. We have to develop within oneself some kind of strength of freedom. And we can do that. That's one thing that is most important in Buddhism, is that we have that freedom. We lost it. Right now, we lost it, and we can see that in so many ways. And one of the ways that we can see that is the way that thoughts really overpower us. So the main first practices that we do in meditation is how to deal with thoughts. And in other words, the first thing that we see when we sit to meditate is that we have so much distraction. Distraction is really something that has no meaning at all. It really serves absolutely no purpose. It's useless. We are distracted, repeating stories all the time. It's kind of, we go to the first and the second and the third, then again back to the first, second, third. How many times we've gone to the same stories, bringing them back to mind. And we have some kind of comfort, but that's because we have found a comfort zone, that's all. It's easier for us to settle in that comfort zone than to question that comfort zone. That comfort zone is something that we are all the time dwelling in. And maybe it's not so good, because actually we cannot really say that we've been so successful in finding this constant well-being, being very open to others, have a lot of empathy and a lot of love and kindness and compassion equanimously towards other people. We can't say that we have all these qualities so well developed. So that is something that is happening because of these kind of problems. So the main first objective is how we are going to deal with a thought that comes in our minds. Usually what happens is that when a thought comes, then we're taken over by that thought. And we are not aware of that. We can think, no problem. But as long as we are aware of that thinking, then there is no problem. Usually that doesn't happen. There is one thought and another thought and another thought. There's a chain of thinking that happens in our minds, and we lose awareness of what's happening in the present moment. And if we want to really find what reality means, then of course we cannot find reality in the past, because the past is dead, and we cannot find reality in the future because it's just a speculation. So the only door or gateway to reality could be like the present moment. And even that is quite elusive. What can we define as being a present moment? It's very strange, because it cannot even have a duration. Otherwise it has one part of the duration that is past, another that hasn't happened, and it's the future. So it's really like the very present moment, this very instant of the present moment, through which then we might have a gateway to finding reality. And yet, distraction is showing us that we're all the time involved with the past and also with the future. And when it has to do with the present, then usually we're commenting on what's happening on the present. So we're not really experiencing the present without real thinking. This thinking is like a screen that separates us from the experience of the present moment. And so we have to find a way in which the mind finds that silence. Thoughts produce noise. There's always noise in our minds. And somehow we are so habituated to thoughts that they're like a companion. We're always like, whenever we're tired physically or we don't want to talk with anyone and we sit down, then we start to turn on the video of our minds and start to think about one thing or another. It seems that if we lack that companionship of thoughts and thinking and stories and stuff, we cannot deal with silence. And there's nothing wrong with silence. Actually, maybe even though silence might seem to be very boring because it doesn't have that kind of entertainment, then maybe we could find enormous qualities in that silence, enormous qualities in that feeling bored, because it's a very healthy kind of boredom. After all, the entertainment that we get from thinking is not real entertainment. It's just like a pot, that produces all kinds of emotions. And of course it makes us feel accompanied because we're accompanied by all these stories. We're entertained. And all that it does for us is that it really, again, settles us in this comfort zone. This comfort zone that we settle in, which is a lot to do with this thinking process, is something that we never question. But maybe it's about time that we start to question if it's such a good comfort zone. And it's something that we should really aim at. Because are we really so developed within ourselves in terms of emotion and in terms of perception and in terms of knowledge and so forth that we can settle within that comfort zone that brought about all these qualities? I mean, this comfort zone maybe is something that is our base, is our usual base. We settle into it, and the biggest companion to that is distraction. Knowledge has a lot to do with the Buddhist path. We have to find wisdom. Wisdom is the wisdom of knowing things as they are, of perceiving reality as it is, and not really as we perceive it to be, probably. That is one of the main things that we have to find out. And for that, then, we need a mind that is quiet, that can stay still, that can remain still, at least for a certain amount of time. And that has nothing to, that's totally the opposite of distraction. Distraction is just a habit. It is more an addiction than a habit. It's really within us all the time. So the main, or the first practice of meditation is how we are going to deal with a thought, not particularly blocking it or suppressing it, but taking away from that thought the magnetic power that it has over our attention. And for that, then, usually in the tradition, then we start to use a support. Because our minds, whenever there is a thought, there is an object that object of the thought. We think about something. Can you think about nothing? It's impossible. You cannot think without having an object on which you're thinking. Even if it is a fleeting thought, there is always an object in which the mind is set on, and then the thought happens. So thinking has to do with an object. But now we have millions of objects, because that is distraction. We're going and jumping from one to the other. Then we hear a sound, and we go with the sound. A form moves, and then we go with the form. And then we have a smell, and it goes with the smell. It's like the image is like a monkey that is jumping from one window to another window. A window of the senses, the window of the thoughts, the window of emotions. And we have to quieten that monkey. We have to teach that mind that we can also be quiet. We can also be silent in terms of mind, we have an ability to still the mind, to bring the mind to a state of stillness. Why is that? Is that a mental gymnastic that we're doing? Why is it that we have to aim at that? It's because it has a lot to do. First of all, it has a lot to do as the basis for finding wisdom, which is the main point of Buddhism. Buddhism is not restricted to just finding a mind that is still, because with that we cannot really uproot completely all the afflictions that we have. We cannot uproot with a still mind like the root of anger and attachment and jealousy and pride and all these afflictions that don't have much to do with our own nature. They're just like invalid kind of perceptions or cognitions that happen within us. So in order to deal with them with strength, then a mind that is able to stay still is a mind that has a lot of more power than a mind that is totally jumping from one place to the other. That's why the first practices of developing stillness of mind, finding this silence within our minds, is very important. It's not the only way, but for the general case, I mean, in general, for most of us, then we have to deal firstly with that. And then when we find that that mind is able to stay in the present moment, then maybe we can have a chance of transcending the present moment. The natural state of our minds, according to what Buddha found, which was also kind of confirmed, corroborated by millions of practitioners, the natural state of mind, the mind in our natural state, before there is any kind of distortion, is beyond words and beyond thoughts. It's beyond description also. So we cannot really know it through thinking. We cannot really approach it through only philosophy. Philosophy can give us a good picture of it, but it's still not something that is beyond a picture. It's still a picture, a photo, a good photo maybe, but it's still a photograph. In order to really realize, to experience directly what the nature of our minds is, then we have to find a way in which our mind can, by itself, can transcend that grip that concept has on it, that thought has on it. And for that to happen, then the meditation is the right tool. Because in meditation, we don't really use the conceptual mind. We're not against it, we're not fighting it, unless we do, of course, analytical meditation. We are not particularly using the conceptual mind. Of course, we are in the conceptual mind. We haven't known yet the non-conceptual mind. That is not something that can be taught or can be studied. It can only be experienced. But we are creating the conditions in order to come closer to knowing the non-conceptual mind. Why the non-conceptual mind? Because that is our true nature. That is Buddha nature. That is our state of perfect being. That is what we always are, we've always been, we always will be. We are now, according to Buddhism, a human being. We never cease to be a Buddha, a perfect being within ourselves. The whole point of Buddhism is to discover that. But even if we don't go that far, still to quieten the mind, still to find a way to not to be caught up by distraction and the power of thoughts will bring us a lot of benefit, a lot of satisfaction, a lot of well-being, and it will open our minds to experiencing an inner space that probably now is very difficult for us to experience because it's all covered by thinking. That space that we can find through this type of practice is a space in which is something that we have managed by ourselves. We cannot really buy it. We cannot really study it. No matter how many books you study, you cannot really find it. But we can find it through meditation. And if we find that space, that spaciousness within our minds, then situations will continue to happen. We have no control over them. And thoughts will continue to happen, maybe less, but they will continue to happen, no problem. Emotions will continue to arise. But before banging on us and immediately creating a response, then they will kind of find this inner expansiveness, this inner space of well-being, and somehow they will lose a lot of impact on us. So we will find a key to being a much more satisfied, a much more happy person. Even if our aim is not really complete freedom, complete finding out our Buddha nature and all these things that Buddhism says, still the practice that quietens the mind is something that is extremely helpful. So as you see, meditation in Buddhism is something very specific. It's not something very vague in which then you sit and you just sit to meditate and then you don't know what you have to do. Actually, like the whole of Buddhism is like a manual. It's like a cookbook somehow, You put this and you do that and then you find out this and so forth. So it's very precise in the instructions that are given. Because we need a system. We do need a system in order to counteract so much habit that we have, of all kinds. We are a product of our habits, so we can develop healthier habits. And one of the healthy habits that we can develop is counteract distraction. That's the first step. Distraction is really nothing really that helps us, even in a worldly way, as I said before. So the practice that I suggest we do now has to do with that. First, it's of course we have to teach the mind to rest in the present moment. But nounness is something very elusive, right? It's quite difficult to grasp. The present moment is quite difficult to grasp. So what we do first is to adopt a more tangible kind of support. And usually the support that is very practical is our breath, because we have the breath all the time. I mean, wherever we are, we're breathing. So we can always come back to the breath. We can also put some small stone and fixate our vision in the stone and our attention in the stone. We can also visualize an image. We can also use the flame of a candle. But we don't have all these things all the time, but we have our breath. So breathing is quite good. And breathing, actually, it represents the present moment, but in a more tangible way. That's why it's easier. Breathing then becomes one thought. Instead of having millions of thoughts, millions of objects, which is what happens usually when we are distracted, then we start to narrow down, the complexity of our minds into one thought, into present. Present is a concept anyhow. So, okay, instead of having too many concepts, we train our minds to be comfortable with only one concept, which is following the breath. Each instant of inhalation, each instant of exhalation is one instant of the present moment. So we are actually using breathing as a representation of the present moment. That is fine, we can do that. And then when we are quite comfortable with that, and the mind has found a state of stillness based on that support, then we will have the capacity to release that support, and the mind will be able to catch, to be aware of the present moment, that more elusive type of present moment without any support. But that's something that we will do maybe later, maybe tomorrow. Today, I would like, if we can do a little bit of meditation on that. We will, the most important, of course, the meditation posture is quite important, but of course we are all sitting on chairs, so the back should be very straight. That's the main point in meditation. Even if one sits cross-legged, the back straight is the most important because it harmonizes our energies. We create the conditions at the physical level in order to have, at a mental level, a meditative state. So with the back very straight, then we keep the eyes open. That is a characteristic of this meditation. But of course, visual distractions are quite strong, so we lower the gaze at about 1 meter, 1 yard from our body. We can blink, no problem. But anyhow, it's quite convenient to learn or to start to find a meditative state even having your eyes open. One of the reasons is that then we can integrate during our daily activities some meditative states here and there. If we only experience meditative state with our eyes closed, which is what most meditations do, then it's very difficult then to integrate because we can't go along our daily activities with our eyes closed. It would be chaos, right? So, therefore, we try to experience the meditative state in the best way possible, the easiest way to then be able to merge it with our everyday activity. Eyes open, but just as we keep our eyes open, we keep all the other senses open. That means to say that we don't block any sense. It's not a matter of withdrawing completely from the world and being totally concentrated and absorbed into this meditative absorption in such a way that we cannot even experience what's going around us. That's not the point. We cannot close all the doors to wisdom, and the five senses are doors of perception. So therefore, we cannot really block the perceptions. That is online with our type of practice. So our senses are open. If there is a sound, we can hear it. But then, just hearing the sound is okay. Now, hearing the sound, someone that coughs, if I hear the cough, that's fine. Perfect. If I hear the cough and then I start to say, oh, he already coughed too much. Doesn't he know I'm meditating here? You know? Then we get caught up in then that's no good. That's again the train of thoughts. So we have to cut that down. You know, the moment our minds start to fixate on the sound, on the form that moves, or on the smell or whatever, then we again come back to the breath. Of course, we will, even though we want to follow the breath, there will be thoughts. And whenever there is a thought, usually what happens is that without even knowing, then we go into the second, third, fourth, 50th, sixth, or whatever. We go into the train of thought until after sometimes, actually I was reading here, you know, and then we come back because we were distracted. Now, the point of this practice is that we want to bring the mind to the state of nowness. So, the moment we see that we're thinking, immediately, that is something that we have to be quite determined to. Immediately the moment we find ourselves thinking, that means to say we forgot about the breathing, we bring back the attention to the breathing. We have to have full attention, full mindfulness, full presence of the breathing coming in, how it comes into the body, how it stays a little bit, and then how it comes out, and again we repeat the process. And of course, thoughts will come, no problem, because we can always come back to the breathing. That's the main practice. It's very simple in words. Let's see how it happens in the experience. We'll do about maybe 20 minutes or 15 minutes of practice. Just follow the breath in and out. Attention should be totally with each instant coming in. Feel how it goes into the body. You bring it down, stays a little bit, then again out. The attention should be neither too loose, nor too loose, nor too tight. Relaxation is important, but attention should be there within that relaxation. If a thought comes, then just notice the thought. The moment you notice the thought, it will disappear. Immediately, then, back to the breathing. If you find that is difficult and your mind is flooded with thoughts, then break a bit the meditation for a few moments and determine to be mindful, and again start meditating. It's just a matter of the attention, the presence of mind. Stillness is important, but also clarity of mind is very important. So we should be aware, not kind of sleepy or not noticing what is happening. but really knowing what's happening at every moment. If the mind loses the breathing and it's in a thought, just bring it back to the breath. That's all we have to do, again and again. If it helps to count, you can count inhaling and exhaling counts as one. And that cycle you repeat and count it at up to 7, and then break the meditation. And again start from 1 to 7. Then you would do short periods, but many times. That also helps at the beginning. Are there any questions you'd like to ask?
When you said break the meditation, when you offered the counting as a possibility, could you say what you mean about breaking the meditation?
Breaking the meditation. Sometimes when at the very beginning one sets out to do maybe 20 minutes or half an hour or more, then at the beginning this mind is clear and it's not so difficult to find some stillness of mind, or that the whole meditative state kind of comes quite clear at the beginning, but it's not so easy to extend it. So usually then it is said that if we shorten the period of meditation, then we get better quality, and then we have short period, but many times. But each short period will be of a better quality than trying to do one whole long time on a stretch. And one way, because we're not going to be with a watch all the time looking, for how short the period should be, then since we're using the breathing, then we can count 7 breaths or 3 breaths. 3 breaths is a bit too short, but 7 breaths, and then just stop. Stopping means that you're not particularly following the breath. It doesn't mean that because you stopped or you broke the meditation, then you start to think about all the projects that you have to do on that day or something. And that doesn't mean, that's not what is meant. You break the meditation means that you cease to be focused on the breathing, but you still keep a presence of mind, but it's not focused. And you try to keep like open mind, without any, also not getting involved with thoughts, a bit mindful, but not so focused. And again, you're focused on the breathing 7 times. And in that way, then when you do like a half an hour period, it becomes a succession of many sub-periods of 7 breaths. And for some people that works better. In general, like the first meditations, which are dealing with the breathing, they have to do with counting because it's easier.
I'm wondering if you can just explain a little bit to me about like a mantra, because in the beginning I have a mantra that I say and it was all about love and light, but I was feeling a lot of emotion, though positive, but then you suggested to start counting. And when I started counting and wasn't using my mantra, I became, I guess, more in a neutral spot. And it was a very different experience in the meditation.
Well, if you're used to use it, you have a mantra from before and you practice with mantra. I know some traditions, they have the first thing you receive is a mantra, like TM, I think, uses mantra like that. And it's quite effective, I think. In Buddhism, we use mantras in a different context. Like it's not only just a mantra that is being recited verbally or mentally, but also this is accompanied with a whole visualization and many different things. So it's a different way of using mantra. In general, in this type of practice, we don't resort to mantra. It's kind of like the whole purpose is knowing our minds, something that we don't really know. We never look at our minds. We use our minds, and then we connect with the 5 senses, and our minds are always out. So the first time that we're trying to use our minds to look at itself is through meditation. I don't know the first, but I mean, usually it's in meditation is when you're changing the orientation of the attention. Instead of going out, then you want to kind of observe your mind. That's why one becomes so aware of the thoughts that one has. And in that, then, it doesn't matter what kind of thought you have. Even if it's a horrible thought, you don't judge the thought. And if it's a fantastic thought of compassion, love, emotion, like whatever good, like devotion and renunciation or whatever thought, again you don't care, because we are trying to take the color that goes along with the thoughts, because that color is the thing that really traps us, So we're trying to train our minds to see the thought as a neutral thing that happens in our minds. By being somehow indifferent to the thought, because it kind of wants to captivate us, we don't care about the color that it has. We just see it as a thought. Then how many more times thoughts can come and catch us? After some time, they lose strength, because they lose that kind of special quality which drives our attention towards them. So the technique is to be very neutral toward them. If a thought, you heard maybe in Zen they say, if a Buddha comes, kill him. Of course, that doesn't mean we have to go around, but it means that it doesn't matter if a Buddha comes into thought. That would be the best, But it doesn't matter. I mean, just a thought. Anything is just a thought. So as you mentioned, it is developing a quality of being neutral, kind of quite clinical, This is thought, this is non-thought. Or this is presence, this is the present moment, that is a thought. Recognize things as they are, not really as they appear. A thought now appears not as it is. As I said at the beginning, it's something intangible, totally elusive, but it really, one thought can create a war, One thought can create depression and can bring someone to suicide, And it all starts with a thought that person was unable to release. It was totally the strength of that thought conditioned that person and drove them to suicide, So thought doesn't need to have that quality. And by this practice of developing neutrality, that's a very good word, then, that kind of strength that the thought has starts to wane, it can become more and more weaker and weaker. Yeah, that's the whole point. We can only, then we can have thoughts, and they will not interrupt the continuity of our minds, you see. If we manage that, then the thought is just a thought, They become like sparks that don't have much strength on them. And then, if we want, we can think and create an idea, which, through which we can analyze reality or develop compassion, devotion, and so forth. Because our minds are so quiet, then we can be much more concentrated and develop in a much more effective way any of these qualities. Yeah.
Thank you.
The open eyes meditation is new to me, and when I tried to do it, I kept going in and out of focus.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that?
That's actually like a feature, a distinctive feature of Buddhist meditation. We meditate with open eyes. One of the things, the reason for that, even though at the very beginning is a bit more difficult, especially if you are used to meditating with closed eyes. That is quite difficult for people who have already an experience of meditation with closed eyes. It really doesn't make much change. It's not so important if you meditate only 10 minutes or half an hour or 20 minutes. The problem with closed eyes is that we sleep with closed eyes. So at the level of the body, we're also creating the conditions for inducing mental dullness, lack of clarity, and eventually sleep, because we're used to that. And when you do like long periods of practice, so you're in a retreat, you do 3 hours of practice every session, 4 times a day or something. In 3 hours, then staying with the eyes closed 3 hours and keeping clarity, which is most important in the practice, is not so easy. Whereas if you keep open the vision, then it helps also to keep alive that clarity, that lucidity of the mind. And that is an important factor. I spoke mostly about stillness, but clarity of the mind has to be always present, because otherwise we can be still, the mind can be without any thought, and we have absolutely no clarity. It's totally useless. It creates conditions of more dullness, We've slept every day of our lives, and we've been with deep sleep without any thoughts. It hasn't helped us at all because we were not aware of that. Yeah. So that is another reason. Not only that, then we will be able to integrate our meditative state while we wash dishes or we walk or whatever better if we don't have to close our eyes in order to recreate the meditative state, but also because of the clarity. And thirdly, you know, like as I said before, clarity has to do with lucidity. Lucidity has to do with wisdom, yeah? So we cannot close any possibilities of wisdom that we can have. And the five senses are open doors to perception. Of course, they are perception. And perception is, in other words, has to do with knowledge and eventually with wisdom. So many practices in Buddhism, they have to do with open eyes, looking at the sky and different things. So it's another conditioning. That's the thing. We have to be free. Be free means that we can meditate in the simplest and easiest way possible. At the beginning, of course, it is recommended that we use this posture, you know, that has 7 points. I didn't mention them because we're sitting on chairs. But actually, eventually, then meditative state has to come along with us even if we walk and we talk and everywhere, you know, because otherwise it's only maybe of our 24 hours a day we meditate how much? Half hour, 1 hour, and the rest of the day we're involved in our confusion, total, you know, deluded state of mind. It won't help so much. So the idea is that we, you know, during our daily activities, we have some experience of meditative state. Then when we sit back, it will help us to reinforce or strengthen our experience of meditative state, and that will help us in the everyday life. You know, it's like two hands kind of helping each other. And for that, then open eyes is here. Of course, at the very beginning, if you're used to it, as you say, you will come out and enough. So start, I would advise, you know, start with closed eyes, and you find your meditative state like that. I mean, the mind is present and it's quite still, and then it's open just very little, you know, so that you kind of incorporate a little bit of the vision, but not much, just very, very little. You're kind of not really seeing something, and slowly open up more and more every day until you can meditate. The best is meditating just straight, looking straight, because that's the normal way. Yeah? So we have to be normal. We have to be relaxed. The less appendages we put on it, you know, the more we will come to the natural state. That's what natural means, right? And we're not always with the eyes closed. We're most of the time with the eyes open, yeah? I think...
Yeah, I think if it's okay, can we conclude with a...
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, and you all, just so you know, Gerardo will be here again tomorrow morning, and then I have wonderful news. As you can tell, sessions like this just sort of go by, and all of a sudden it's time to end, maybe before we want to end. And so Gerardo has graciously agreed to offer on Saturday morning a double session, which is not on your schedule, but in case you're interested, do know that we'll go, at this point it looks like we could probably go no problem for 2 hours.
No,
and so I think we'll have a 2-hour session Saturday morning starting at 9 a.m. For those of you that would be interested in an even longer session then. But tomorrow again at 9 a.m. for an hour. Thank you so much, Gerardo.
So